Welcome to the Business of Blessing, where we'll be discussing the highs and lows of building business, mental health, and growing in relationship with God. Hosted by Matt and Sarah Jane Ethan, we invite you to join our journey into greater practical, emotional, and spiritual freedom. For more support and free resources, head to www.businessofblessing.com, and don't forget to subscribe to our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes so you don't miss a single episode. Today we're going to talk about a concept that we've stumbled across, which has absolutely changed our lives, and I would say has provided the single greatest key to freedom in our life, in every aspect of our life. And it's actually a very, very simple concept. Turns out, I think it's what God's been saying all along.
Yeah, it's like in the
Bible.
Bible.
But it's actually really, really hard to live by.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge of the Christian life and of spiritual surrender.
Yeah, this concept of being beholden to something or someone, having to do the stuff of life, actually traps us into all sorts of problems and causes all sorts of pathologies and behaviour problems that realistically is actually what we see in the world over.
So it all started because Pastor Gary Clark from Hillsong London, he'd said something in one of his sermons that Baal, as in the idols of the Old Testament, the word Baal in Hebrew means master.
Wow.
And I thought, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I went and looked it up in the concordance. Yes, it does. It means master.
Wow.
But that Hebrew word is used in the context of have to do.
Whoa.
Because that's what happens when you have a master.
Yeah.
You have to do whatever he's saying. You don't have a choice. You're not your own anymore.
Yeah.
And that concept blew my mind because I was thinking about it and I was like, do you know what? You could root the source of everybody's stress down to a have to. Have to do, have to be, have to get.
Yeah.
And that is what drives people into misery.
Yeah.
I have to, I can't let it go. And they're pushing harder than they can. They're running faster than they want to. They're burning out. They're miserable. They're having health issues, but they can't stop because there's this voice in their head that's saying, you have to be, you have to do, you have to get.
Yeah. Like a slave driver, right?
It's a slave driver. That's exactly what it is.
You know, because you are you're trapped by that master. You know, you've got to do what they say because there are consequences, right? There is they're going to hurt you or kill you or whatever, and that's certainly something that we can recognise in extreme human cases, like real practical cases of literal slavery. But that's why it's so similar and so dangerous in our own heads, because
it becomes internal oppression.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah.
That actually you're not being oppressed from the outside, you're being oppressed from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the whole message of Jesus.
Yeah.
That he came and everyone said, oh, he's going to free us from the external oppression. Jesus is like, no, I've come to free you from the internal oppression, because that is much worse.
Yeah.
That is literally killing your soul.
Yeah.
The external oppression, they can kill your body. The internal oppression will kill your soul.
Wow.
And he actually he says that, almost in those words. And I think this is something that we don't, it's definitely not, it wasn't a concept that I'd really heard of or engaged with properly, because I think we have a tendency in Christian circles to try and deal with external behaviours. So we just say, oh, you need to stop sleeping around. You need to stop smoking. You need to stop spending so much time on social media. You need to stop being so grumpy. You need to stop being a spendaholic, or gambling. Do you know, any of these things? And so it becomes, it actually becomes a have to. You have to stop. You have to conform.
It's certainly been my life's work, stopping being this person that, for all intents and purposes, I probably don't like either. Because it's rooted out of some nastiness, some arrogance, some pride, some sin, essentially. And that's not actually true. I don't think it's true at all. Actually, as I've stopped trying to fix, basically I stopped trying to stop doing those things. I have to stop doing this. I have to stop being like that.
Yeah.
And
that becomes a slave driver in and of itself.
As
I have to stop. Yeah.
Those pathologies, those behaviours have reduced significantly, if not gone away altogether.
Sorry, what pathology?
As I've stopped
Trying to stop.
Stop trying to stop.
So interesting.
You often get more freedom, right? Because trying to stop frees you up to actually
deal with the actual issue.
Now, if you just stop trying, you're not. That's not the miracle there. It's actually dealing with the underlying.
That becomes denial
cause.
and avoidance when you're just ignoring the issue.
Definitely.
But engaging with the issue without shame. This isn't like a failure. You're not being sinful, selfish, weak, which I think we often kind of communicate, whether we realise we're doing it or not in Christian circles. That, you're displaying bad behaviour, which is socially, or religiously considered to be unpleasant or unacceptable. Yeah. And so you need to change your behaviour. You need to stop doing that thing.
And that's bringing the kingdom of God to earth, right? That's what we essentially end up believing, is that me changing my behaviour, being a nicer person, basically being more of a Victorian Christian
that's interesting
paragon, because that's literally the behaviour that most Christian people try and emulate, is Victorian ethics, which is fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with a lot of those ethics. It's just actually not. It's not what Jesus is doing on earth.
Yeah, and it's the fact that it can become a trap in and of itself, a prison all of its own. Yeah, that you're trying so hard to be this person that apparently you think you're not. And so as I've talked with people about this concept of like whatever stress is in your life, whatever misery is in your life, it is rooted in a have to. Can we identify what is your have to do, have to be, have to get? What is driving you harder and faster than you want to go or you can physically go? Then once we've identified the have to, then I say, what's at stake? Wow. Because that is the root, that is the root of the root, is fear. Yeah. So I have to be or else. Yeah. I have to get or else. I have to do or else. Yeah. It's the or else. That's the key. That is the chain. Or else. That's your fear.
What are the repercussions?
Yes, and it's meaning that your life and your thinking and your behaviour is actually motivated out of fear. Wow. And we have to be aware of this. Yeah. We have to be wise to it, understanding and recognising in ourselves when our actions are being motivated and prompted by fear. Yeah. And so that's been really eye-opening for me, and really eye-opening for a lot of people that I've spoken to actually realise, it's not that I'm a bad person. Yeah. I'm just afraid.
Yeah, or hurt. A lot of the cases. And, just thinking, that's obviously the emotional side, but it does replicate out into the sort of practical physical side as well. Just telling a story there about my life, my work life. I was working on a project, been working on it for 3 months, a lot of hard work, but the numbers, like the success rating, was going downwards. And I was at this week where I was just like, I've got to do this thing. I've got to just work hard at it. I've got to do it. I've got to make it happen. So that's what I did. But I knew at the beginning of that, I felt God was going to teach me a lesson of some description through this. He was going to speak to me. And he did. So the following week, after I got stressed and was trying to make the numbers go upwards, because I have to impress people, I have to succeed, I have to be dependable, I have to be strong. I actually ended up in a situation where I realised that because I didn't have to do that. Also, although the numbers were going down, I didn't have to do that project. I had another project that I could do that I actually ended up enjoying as well. Obviously, like so, being self-employed, it's a bit more fluid for us. Obviously when you're working, it's maybe not quite as easy to transfer this, but just hear the story for what it is. And actually, as I then on that following week just worked on the project that I needed to do, that I wanted to do for a couple of weeks, just enjoyed it, got the work done. It was work that needed to be done anyway, so I was enjoying it. Done. Within 2 weeks, the numbers on the first project started going up, and it's and that's what I was really starting to develop, this concept of actually on the day-to-day sort of work life stuff, just actually listen, like what do I have?
Well, that was our antidote to have to do, because I sat there for a long time thinking, well, you can't just say you don't have to. One, because like, it feels like, well, there are practical things. I have to breathe.
Yeah.
I have to eat.
Yeah.
You can't just say we don't have to. Well, that's not practical.
Yeah.
But equally, how do you stop doing something that you believe you have to do?
Yeah.
There's a reason why you're doing it, because you think you have to.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, how do you like break out of that? And I think for those two things, first of all, identifying the fear. What is at stake? I have to, or else.
Yeah.
Let's tackle that, because that is the root fear, and that's often linked to childhood trauma. You know, fear of what people think of you, which is essentially fear of rejection. And so fear, and often a fear of letting go and letting God be God.
Yeah.
Trying to keep control of things that are not within your control.
Yeah.
That is an incredibly stressful way to live.
Yeah.
But the other thing being, because I sat there thinking, oh, what's the opposite of have to? Because it can't be don't have to. That doesn't make any sense. And I suddenly thought, what if it's to have? What if you literally switch it around the other way? Instead of have to, you say to have. It's about, what do I have? It's about being able to analyze myself, my capacity. What has God given me? What resources do I have? What desires do I have? What abilities do I have?
Yeah.
And discharging those. And that has really changed the way we work. And that example that you gave, I think, is a really good one, where you're pushing in your business. I have to do this. I have to make this work. And it was making you miserable.
Yeah.
And the ability to recognize that and say, I am becoming miserable because I'm pushing too hard, because I feel I have to.
Yeah.
And breaking that cycle.
Yeah.
And you broke that cycle by saying, what do I have?
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think we both do this now at the start of a work day. We just stop and we kind of analyze ourselves and say, what do I have? And by that, I mean, what is in me to do today?
Yeah.
And if by the end of the day, I've done everything that was in me to do that day, I've won.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether technically it doesn't look like it was enough, or I feel like it hasn't measured up to some standard that was already in my head before I even started. It doesn't matter. If I've done what was in me to do that day, then I've won.
Yeah.
And that is as much as I can do.
Yeah.
And it has to be enough. God will do the rest, because
He'll use
if
it.
it's not enough, that's when I will start running harder and faster than I'm able to, and I will become miserable and burning
that's
out.
The taskmaster that's behind in the head, the slave driver, essentially.
And I'll start to display symptoms of stress.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, like, we're focused on, smoking and sleeping around and, gambling and, isn't it bad? Those are symptoms.
Yeah.
That's not a willful disobedience that people are just not doing what God told them to do. And that's not the issue here. And I think Jesus makes that very clear when he comes and he talks with people. He's never beating them around the head saying, you're not doing the right things. You need to do this. You need to be better people. He loves people because he understands their story. He understands their pain and their hurt.
Yeah.
And he wants to bring his love to the hurting place.
Yeah.
And I believe that this freedom for the captives, the release of the chains, is releasing of these have-tos. Have to do, have to be, have to get. And when we're free of all have-tos and we're able to live in that place of, what do you have? Receive from God what he has for you, and use what he's given you. That is a place of freedom.
Yeah, I love that.
Such freedom.
It's a silly example, but I think it illustrates the point. And anyway, I'll tell you. So when we'd have like a church football league and whatnot, and the team from a particular denomination that's well known, that everybody in that church denomination, everyone's lovely, everyone's really nice and friendly, and it's just well known for that concept. But as soon as we get on the football pitch, the team from that church, they were terrible for getting into fights and hacking your legs and venting out their
repressed anger.
Right, their repressed anger. And like I said, I'm no psychologist, so I have no idea if that's actually what was going on. But it just struck my mind as a funny sort of concept of like, when we end up forcing ourselves into living these particular lives.
It's this blueprint that's imposed on you. I have to be, I suppose in that scenario, I have to be a nice Christian. Yeah. I have to always, make everybody feel, which is largely my have to. I have to just make everybody feel nice, and so that meant that I was ending up suppressing my honesty.
Yeah.
To the point where I didn't even know who I was anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, we end up totally trapping ourselves in this nightmare of a situation, and then the bits that leak out the edge are the bits that then, in church and in culture, we end up whining about in other people when we're totally guilty of other things that are our way of coping, coping, distracting ourselves from what we have to do, and it's like, we're totally consumed with these behaviours. Now, definitely, damaging behaviour is damaging behaviour, and we can't promote it. We wouldn't promote it, but we're not going to just sit there condemning it as if that condemnation of that behaviour is now the solution. That's God's work done in the world. I've condemned some bad behaviour. We're done. We're good. That's useless. It's literally worse than useless, because it makes the person feel even worse. When actually we can be asking questions and communicating with that person, finding out what is it that hurts so much. What slave? What taskmaster are you, obeying through, like you said earlier, asking them what they fear. What do you have in your life? What do you fear? And connecting in a deep, sort of revealing and vulnerable way.
And I think this is why we often avoid this, and other people that I've spoken to, they kind of balk at this and struggle to engage with it, because this means doing some deep, reflective, contemplative work into your deepest traumas, your deepest fears. And that is very scary. But it's the road to life. It's the only road to life.
Yeah, it really is.
We have to deal with the things that are imprisoning you and meaning that you can't live free. You're living a miserable life.
Just ask yourself.
And often making the other people around you miserable too.
Totally. The trouble that sometimes I think, sometimes we're sad or ashamed or whatever of the damage or discord that we produce in the relationships around us. And quite certainly for people like me, if you feel like you're similar to me in any way, like maybe you can think about this, but the damage that you sort of cause in other relationships and friendships, it's like, what is it that you have to do? What pressure? What thing are you striving for?
Yes.
And it's like, it's.
And you'll know when you found it, because as soon as you find the root, you will feel this sense of relief, like, oh, do you mean I don't have to?
Yeah, I don't want to
do
that
whatever
either.
that thing is. Do I don't have to conform to that standard. I don't need to carry that burden. And it's like this feeling of, is that true? Like, can I be that free?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the whole point of all of this, of everything that God's doing with us, everything that Jesus has tried to show us, everything is to tell you, yes, you're allowed to be free. Yeah. That thing does not have to be your master anymore.
Yeah, you don't have to perform to that level.
Yeah, but you won't feel that sense of freedom and that complete release of guilt until you get to the actual root, the deepest fear. And then you just go, oh, I never wanted that to be a part of me anyway. Like, I want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to try anymore, because it's like you're like skipping your way to freedom. Like, yes, get rid of it. I don't even want it.
Just thinking there as well, even just having conversations are so useful, because whenever you find yourself or another person say, well, I have to, don't I?
Yeah.
That's a it's an indicator of maybe that's along the right path. Try and listen out for whenever you say that to yourself or to somebody else.
And when people say it to you, and I've had this a lot recently since I've been aware of this, that people will say, no, you have to.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I don't.
No.
And often people just don't know what to do with that, because I'm like, and we're not talking about, let's just be clear here, we're not talking about keeping your word.
Yeah.
That's a different scenario, because when you've committed yourself to somebody, they will now suffer the consequences if you don't follow through on your word. So you have committed yourself to a have to. That's a relational contract. Yeah. That's a different thing. We're talking about scenarios where you haven't made a commitment to do something and somebody's saying, no, you have to. And it's like, nah, I don't think I do actually.
And that is often a lot of what the gospel message that people hear is, you've now been freed to have to do a bunch of stuff that God tells you to do, but it's not usually actually God telling you to do those things. It's usually
Christian culture,
other people, other religious people, right? Like, so, and I think that's often where you'll find a lot. Well, you have to, don't you? You have to. It's like, no, I don't have to do this specific thing to make God's kingdom come into the earth. Jesus did that. It's finished.
Yeah. But what do you have?
That's
the key.
What
do you have? Because most people don't know how to connect with what they have, and they don't know how to share what they have, because they might not think that it's valuable. They think they haven't got anything to offer. They think it's too small. All of these things actually restricts their ministry of passing on the goodness that's inside of them.
Yeah.
And so actually helping people to connect with what do you have is the key to being able to be effective in the world without feeling guilty or burning out.
The taskmaster literally distracts you from the thing
he really
that
does.
you were born for.
Yeah.
I refrain from like those sorts of concepts, right? Because this idea that you were born, you're special, that you're like super important, that you're going to change the world, like that ends up, for me, has been a taskmaster.
Interesting. Whether you have to be outstanding.
You have to be. You have to change.
You have to make a name for yourself.
Like,
you have to like.
No one wants to know what I have to say about anything. Why would they? I talk nonsense at least 80% of the time. Like, I'm not going to change the world. But the principle actually is technically true. I am going to change the very, very small world around me.
Exactly.
If I can be free to just not be a slave, essentially, to these have-to-dos. Or
just do what's in front of you. Like you said, the world that you've got, the people that you've got, and the love that you've got in you. Just do that. And that's enough. So I hope that's been an encouraging message for you. And, just to analyse yourself. Like, if you've got stress, misery in your life, just try and analyse yourself. What is it rooted to? It will be rooted to a have to.
Wow.
Have to do, have to be, have to get.
Yeah.
And then from that place, what is at stake? I have to or else. Now you're getting to the root of your fear.
Yeah.
And that is going to be your road to freedom. So I hope that's helped. If you've got any questions, feel free to post them below this video, or on the Instagram or on the Facebook, and we will see you again soon. We hope this episode has encouraged you on your journey into freedom and peace. For more support and free resources, head to www.businessablessing.com, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify and iTunes so you won't miss a single episode.